which is the ranking keywords, or ranking affinity. I know it is not the literal translation, but it is actually the ranking affinity. Why do we call it ranking affinity? Because it's even going to influence the overall affinity calculations. This part is very important that you configure it, that you enter 20 terms, a maximum of 20 terms. I recommend you to enter 20 for the ones you would like to position. This is important to understand. They are not Google searches, as we will see later in the search part. It is not to bring prospects. They simply are. Like your keyword search, the search is for which you, your project, would like to be positioned. For example, in a bicycle store, the word bicycles, buy bicycles and so on, up to 20. 20 terms. Right now I have 5, so 20. What do you want to add? Just 5. That's all right. What happens is that, well, you have to take advantage of the functionality. What does this functionality do? When a prospect enters the project, if he positions the site for any of the terms you have written in the configuration, in the ranking keywords, or visibility keywords, or ranking affinity, whatever you want to call it, you will see a trophy here, a trophy icon, which means that this site ranks, okay? We give you up to position 20, if I'm not mistaken, for one term or for X terms. It could give you all 20 terms, in the case that it positions the site for all 20. It tells you the position and tells you for which word. This is very useful. Why? Because in addition, when you calculate the semantic affinity, here we have the semantic affinity. If you notice, you have the visibility keywords, which we can also translate it as ranking affinity. We always translate it here as ranking affinity, because actually, yes, they are visibility terms, but to understand it well, it is what we call ranking affinity, which means that the site positions for the term bicycle, and for this general calculation, for this calculation that has told you that the affinity is high, it is taking into account, on the one hand, the semantic affinity that is done by tracking up to 10,000 URLs of the content and tagging of iVideos Electricos, comparing it with that of UObyte, which is your client. But, in addition, in this calculation of affinity, it takes into account the word or words for which it is positioning, for which the iVideos Electricos site is positioning, as if you had this term as important in your content. You, in the general configuration, enter the terms you are interested in, and we will take them into account as if your website was talking about this. That is, even if you don't have it in your content, we will take it into account in the semantic affinity calculation. Besides, as I said, we are going to identify it, and this is a very important part for me on a daily basis, which is to detect sites that have semantic affinity, but also have a ranking affinity. Although the ranking affinity influences the semantic affinity, if a site has a high semantic affinity, for example, and on top of that has a ranking affinity, we will give that site an absolute priority. But look, I'm going to give you another case. Imagine that the affinity, instead of high, was medium. Medium, for me, you know it's a good affinity. And, well, for you, a medium or high affinity is a good affinity. If a site has high affinity, but not medium affinity, but it does have ranking affinity, imagine that it ranks for 10 of the 20 terms. For me, that site is a priority. That is, for me, when I see the trophy, I look if the terms and positions are interesting, and if I see that the site positions for terms that interest me in a good position, I will mark it as a priority for ranking affinity, as long as it affects, logically, the global affinity, as I have mentioned.